Hello everyone and welcome back to another monthly reading journal video. In July, I once again filled out the journal in multiple sessions, so here is our first one for the month. I started with the Alabaster Penitentiary series in June, so I started off July with catching up with all the released books. This is an interconnected standalone dark prison romance series, but it's one you should definitely read in order as there is an overarching storyline. My first page of books read is full and looking very satisfying, so this month we get to start all over again on page 2. I'm now completely up to date with this series, however book 5 is due to be released in August, so I'll definitely be getting on that ASAP. Hopefully the wait between book 5 and 6 isn't as long as book 4 and 5 have been, because I do not have the gift of patience when it comes to incomplete series, and I'm not God's strongest soldier. Once again, there's no new countries to mark off, so we're just going straight to my pages in pixels to keep that up to date. Using my finger as a blotting paper has come with great risks, as you can see. I think next year I'll use a different colour set, as these are very bright and not really my colour palette. But I'm finally getting to add a book to one of the harder letters and finishing off column 1 of the alphabet challenge. Moving on to the monthly page, this series was really satisfying to add to my calendar as I had the exact colour matches for each cover, and I also got to mark off half of my TBR already, which was a big improvement from June. Just an obligatory quick montage setting up the review sections for anyone that hasn't seen a monthly video before. Our first book of the month and the second book of the series, Joyless, is about 3 of the officers in this prison. Val, the head CEO who protects the others more than anyone knows, Joy, his work partner and ex-girlfriend, and the rookie who they creatively give the nickname of Rook. You learn a lot more about what the COs at Alabaster Pen do, both when in the prison and when living in the Ivory Mansion in this book, as well as getting to know more of the overall storyline going on in this prison from a very different point of view than any of the other prisoner books. I felt like this book had a lot of rehashing of the plot from book 1 without adding a lot extra to it, and the poly felt a bit forced, like it was an MM with Joy tagging along for the ride, and so I gave it only 3.25 stars. I was still very interested in the overall plot though, and knew that the next 2 couples sounded more like up my alley, so kept on reading the series. Next we're going straight into book 3, which is Brainwashed. This book is about a serial killer who you get glimpses of in book 1 and 2. His name is Felix, and a specialist psychiatrist that is hired to come and figure out what goes on in his mind, Dr. Love. It is a very taboo romance in a very taboo setting, which sort of made it feel a bit less icky for having a doctor-patient relationship. However, it very much used the "I'm not gay, I just like you" trope, which I really don't like in queer romances, and it also felt very out of character for a Nyla K book, as I've read a few of hers before. But despite this, I did enjoy their romance, and this book added a lot more to the overall plot without a lot of rehashing, as Felix was kept in the medical ward, which isn't seen very much in the first 2 books. So because of that, I enjoyed it more than book 2 and gave it 3.5 stars. It had some interesting epilogues that gave a good taste into the couple in the next book too, encouraging me to immediately continue on with the series. Our final book of this session and this series is Fragments. This book is about Ren and Luther, 2 prisoners who have been in Alabaster Pen for many years and are used to the everyday routine. Ren has been obsessed with Luther since he arrived at the prison, but he's also obsessed with sex, and after they have a falling out a few years ago, Luther struggles to trust Ren again. At the same time, everything at Alabaster Pen is changing after the events of book 1, and we start seeing much more of the story and getting much more interesting information. I enjoyed Ren and Luther's romance, as well as the overarching storyline continuation, and it really got me keen for book 5, so I was very happy when I saw it's coming out in August. I gave Fragments 3.75 stars, and I think this might be my favourite couple so far, although I know book 5 is going to give it a run for its money. On to session 2 of July, where I stepped out of the dark romance and went back to my fantasy romantasy roots. My bookshelf is still very red and yellow. Whoops. Despite starting the Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac series this session, I know that I'll be finishing it all this month, so I'm not going to add it to my series tracker as I want to save space and only use it for series that I need to keep track of. We're also finally adding a new country thanks to Kerry D. Andrews. I'm trying my hardest to try and use one of these books to mark off on my bingo, but unfortunately no luck here. Another 2 books to mark off the TBR. There's only one left, but I know I won't be getting to it as Caroline Peckham and Susan Valenti really love writing 1,000-page final books. My best friend recommended this book, so I wanted to read it. It is The Witch's Pet by Kerry D. Andrews. It's a fantasy romance where a human woman, Pandora, is married off to a magi prince, Citri, for the sake of an alliance between the 2 groups. This starts what you can expect, a forced marriage where they have chemistry and you wonder how forced it will stay. This was a very interesting world, quite a bit different to other fantasy worlds I've read, which I definitely enjoyed. Pandora is a very strong woman who agreed to this marriage to save her sister from the fate, and Citri helps teach her what the reality of magi is, which is very different to how she was taught by her father and surrounding community. However, this book was full of the miscommunication trope, like multiple instances of it, which I absolutely hate and pissed me off, and so I dropped my rating of it to only 4 stars overall. From November last year to February this year, I read Zodiac Academy, and I knew at some point that I wanted to get around to reading the original series, which is Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac. Book 1, Dark Fae, starts off the story that runs throughout the entire series. Elise lives in a part of Solaria ruled by 2 gangs who are constantly at war, the Oscura clan and the Lunar Brotherhood. While her brother is attending Aurora Academy, he is killed, and she vows to find out who did it and avenge his death. She suspects the 4 kings of Aurora Academy, Dante, Leon, Gabriel, and Ryder, and tries to get close to all of them to figure out who killed her brother. This series is a reverse harem romance, and if you've read ZA, you know how they end up in the future, but I still found it interesting to read and liked the world building of book 1 even if it was a little slow, giving it 4 stars. Book 2, Savage Fae, just seamlessly continues on with book 1, so there's not much I can say in regards to the plot that doesn't spoil book 1. Savage Fae also built a lot more on the multiple outside plots apart from the romance that are going on throughout this entire series. The romance itself is very much a slow burn in this book. But I enjoyed the pacing of this one much more, so rated it 4.25 stars. On to our final session of July. I made some progress in my 2025 goals, so I'm just marking them off to keep track, hitting 70 books total read so far this year. Oh look, I finally get to add a colour that isn't red or yellow to my bookshelf. Go me! I think next year I won't colour based on genre, just because I know I won't stop reading romance and fantasy, and I would like more variation in colour on this page. As it's the end of the month, I'm also adding my little monthly marker here before I forget. I was determined to finish 10 books this month, so I read a lot during this final period, so there's a lot of orange and yellow. And another hard letter got marked off on the alphabet challenge, leaving only Q, U, X and Y to complete before the end of the year. Unfortunately, I did not have the same luck with matching Tombos to covers this session, but at least it's once again at the end of the month, so I can appreciate how beautiful it is when it's done. As I only had 4 books to add to an entire spread, I thought I would try something a little different for this session. I've given each book half a page and will add some stationery in as decoration themed to each book I read as best as I can with what I have. I don't have a huge collection, so this definitely wasn't perfect, but at least I had something for everything that sort of worked. I also decided to change up the layout a bit because of the extra room, so the core pile rating is going directly underneath the star rating. Starting with book 3 of Robots, which is the new official acronym I'm giving it. Again, there's not much I can say that doesn't spoil the previous book, but this one definitely had a really enjoyable balance between plot and romance. Some fights did feel like the main characters lost just to add to the story rather than because they actually should have lost, which annoyed me a bit. But I did enjoy it overall and gave it 4.25 stars. Moving on to book 4, Broken Fae, where we really start getting a lot more into the plot of the series overall. At this point, I had figured out the plot twist that doesn't end up being revealed until almost the end of book 5, and I was really dreading for it to happen up until that point. This book had a bit more of a focus on the romance just because of something that happened at the end of book 3, but it wasn't an annoying amount and it made sense for it to be focused on based on what happened then. Overall, another 4.25 stars. I then wanted a quick change of pace before I started the 1,000 page finale, so jumped into a Japanese translated fiction, The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. This was such an interesting premise for a book where an island has objects disappear and are forgotten completely by the inhabitants, like birds, ribbons, roses, but some people don't forget when things go missing and they are in constant fear of the memory police and being taken away from their families and lives. Our FMC is an author and she finds out her editor is someone who can remember and creates a safe house with her elderly friend between the 2 floors of her own house for him to live in. He tries to get her to remember what she has forgotten, especially when much more serious things go missing, and she tries to keep him safe and happy. I really enjoyed the premise of this book and it was a quick and easy read, giving it 4.75 stars. And I would love to see a sequel continuing on with the story. Finally, it was time to tackle the final Arbots, Warrior Fae. As I've already mentioned, this was a very long book and it also had a whole hour of epilogue at my reading speed that goes through a lot of their adult lives post the big climax of the series. I had questions based on characters I hadn't seen in Zodiac Academy that were finally answered, and it was actually really interesting to find out why I didn't remember them from that series. But unfortunately, the big end to the plot felt very anticlimactic, and after spending 5 books getting there, it was a bit disappointing. But that didn't distract too much from my overall enjoyment of the book, and I gave it 3.75 stars, which I think shows my feelings towards it based on the other books. There is a 3rd series in this world that I'd like to read in a few months after another bit of a break that happens 10 years after this series and 5 years after ZA with some different characters. Because of how many books I've read this month, I once again have a spare page before my monthly stats, so I'm making a Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac collage. I decided not to plan out the lettering in pencil beforehand, which I am now regretting as they are a bit wonky, especially the S's. I then just sort of made it up as I went on what tapes and stickers and everything to use to complement the fan art and memes I'd printed out to use for this page. I found it really hard to find any fan art that wasn't AI generated, so there's a lot more just like vibes and memes and quotes in this collage compared to the previous ones that I've done for other series. It's a lot less busy than others have been, but I do like this vibe as well. I just wish I had more matching stickers and washi that I could have used a bit better. Now onto my monthly routine of copying the exact format of the previous month's stats page because I cannot remember how I've done it before. Luckily it's a pretty simple layout, so it doesn't take too long to map out and fill out. Just adding the final decorations to match the start of month page and not screwing myself over by just cutting out the title simply this time compared to the start. If you watched last month's video, you'll know exactly what I mean. Finally, before starting on August, I need to fill out my monthly information that goes in the start of journal spreads. The Memory Police was my top rated book of the month and it beat out The Rainfall Market, The Wolf King and The Mercenary and the Mortician on the yearly book bracket. In July, I read 10 books, 5,516 pages, 1 translated book, 4 different countries, completed 2 more of the alphabet challenge, and read every day of the month. Unfortunately, I had no 5-star reads and didn't complete any more of my 25 in 2025. I can honestly say that I had no plan in terms of a theme for August when I started this page. I have seen people who make reading journal content before use the Tombow bullet tip end for line work and wanted to give that a try, so I used my 942 for a nice neutral brown. Because of that random decision, I got out all the other brown stationery I owned to try and come up with a theme based on my calendar design. Luckily, in my recent Journal Say haul, I had bought a few different pieces that would work for this colour palette, so I had quite a few different things to choose from. Just playing around with my chosen pieces on the page now before I stick anything down to decide on a layout that I like. This large photo is actually on thick postcard-like cardboard, so I had to add quite a lot of glue to the back, and it's also added a bit of bulk to the journal, but it felt too perfect not to use. The font doesn't really fit the vibe, but I decided on it and printed it out before I chose the accompanying stationery, so it's just going to be how it is for this page. Keeping the brown theme going by using the same Tombow to highlight the days of the week row and the corner where the date will go. I then used a dark brown Staedtler Tri-Plus fine liner to place the numbers in each date. I also used that same dark brown to write my TBR on this sticker to keep the whole spread very soft with no harsh black pens in it. Just adding a few little finishing touches to the blank spaces on this spread to make it a little more busy, especially in the very middle bottom where there is a large amount of white space. Despite having no idea what I was going to do with this page when I turned to it, I really like how it's ended up. Let's flip through everything we've completed in this video and reflect on what we've done. Let me know what you think of this spread in the comments below, as well as if you think I should continue with the larger review spreads with decorations suited to each book. I enjoy them, but I also feel like I'd struggle finding the right pieces for some books, and it adds a lot of time to make them. Thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!